She called him non-compliant. The dashcam called her bluff. What began as a routine stop unraveled into a trial that shook a city and stripped a veteran officer of her badge. Witness how one man's calm voice, one clerk's courage, and one video forced the truth into the light. Before we uncover the unexpected turns of this story, make yourself comfortable, relax, and remember to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss more stories like this tomorrow. The summer sun beat down on Augusta, Georgia, its heat shimmering off the asphalt on Peach Orchard Road. Marcus Tate, 32, gripped the wheel of his borrowed pickup truck, a couple of grocery bags sitting in the passenger seat, orange juice, a pack of hamburger buns, and some peaches for his aunt's cobbler. He'd driven this road 1,000 times growing up, but now, back from Denver for a family reunion, everything felt a little off, like the town was watching him. Marcus adjusted his rearview mirror, noticing a police cruiser trailing him for the last 3 blocks. His stomach tightened, but he kept his speed steady at 30 miles per hour, signaled early, and switched lanes, hoping the cop would pass. The cruiser didn't budge. Red and blue lights flashed, and a single siren blip cut through the humid air. Marcus exhaled, muttering, "All right, here we go," and pulled over to the shoulder, his hands resting on the wheel. The cruiser's door swung open, and out stepped Officer Laura Hensley, late 40s, with a tight brunette ponytail and a stare that didn't waver. Her boots crunched on the gravel as she approached, one hand resting near her holster, her badge glinting in the sunlight. "License and registration," she said, her voice flat, like she'd already made up her mind. Marcus nodded, keeping his movements slow. "I'm reaching for my wallet, okay?" he said, pulling out his ID. He grabbed the truck's papers from the glove compartment and handed them over. "What's this about, officer?" he asked, his tone calm but curious. Laura's eyes narrowed slightly. "This truck's not yours," she said, glancing at the registration. "It's my cousin's," Marcus replied. "I'm borrowing it while I'm in town visiting family." Laura stepped back, her hand still near her holster. "Step out of the vehicle," she ordered. Marcus blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, what?" he said, his voice steady but puzzled. "Out, now," she repeated, her tone sharper. He sighed, opened the door, and stepped onto the pavement, hands raised slightly to show he wasn't a threat. The heat pressed against him, sweat beading on his forehead. Laura circled him slowly, her gaze scanning him like he was a puzzle she didn't trust. "You match the description of someone we're looking for," she said. "A theft reported nearby this morning." Marcus frowned. "I've been at my aunt's house all day. You can call her to confirm," he offered. But Laura didn't respond. Instead, she radioed for backup, her voice clipped, mentioning a possible suspect. Marcus shook his head, trying to stay calm. "Officer, I haven't done anything wrong. Can you tell me what's going on?" he asked, his voice firm but polite. Laura's jaw tightened. "Hands on the hood," she snapped, stepping closer. Marcus hesitated, his brow furrowing. "Am I being detained?" he asked. Before he could say more, she grabbed his arm, turning him toward the truck. "Hands?" "Now?" she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Marcus complied, placing his palms on the hot metal, the heat stinging his skin. "I'm a graphic designer," he said over his shoulder. "I don't carry anything illegal. I'm just here for my family." Laura's hands patted him down roughly. "Stop talking," she said. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Another cruiser pulled up, its tires crunching gravel. Officer Daniels, younger and quieter, stepped out, watching the scene unfold. Laura spoke to him in a low voice, and though Daniels looked unsure, he didn't question her. She pulled out handcuffs, snapping them onto Marcus's wrists. "What's the charge?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tightening in his chest. "Resisting an officer," she said, her eyes cold. Marcus shook his head, disbelief washing over him. "I didn't resist," he said. "I just asked a question." Laura didn't answer, pushing him toward her cruiser. As they drove towards the station, Marcus stared out the window. The grocery bags left behind in the truck. The peaches probably bruising in the heat. He wasn't angry, not yet. Just tired. Tired of moments like this. Tired of proving he belonged. The fluorescent lights buzzed in the Augusta police station as Marcus Tate sat on a hard bench, the cuffs long gone, but his wrists still sore. It was 6:45 a.m., and a new officer, gray-haired and tired-looking, walked in with a clipboard. "You're being charged with obstruction and resisting an officer," he said, avoiding Marcus's eyes. "Bail hearings this afternoon." Marcus leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "I didn't obstruct anything. I was stopped for no reason. Can I see the report?" The officer shifted, uncomfortable. "That's for your lawyer," he mumbled, then handed Marcus a phone for one call. Marcus dialed his old college friend Lena Carter, a defense attorney in Savannah. It had been years, but she picked up on the second ring. "Marcus, you okay?" she asked, her voice sharp with concern. "Not really," he said, explaining the stop. "Sit tight," Lena replied. "I'm on my way." By noon, Lena strode into the station, her navy blazer crisp, her eyes scanning the room like she owned it. Officer Hensley sat at her desk, typing, but glanced up as Lena approached. "I'm here for Marcus Tate," Lena said, her tone polite but unyielding. "I need the arrest report and dashcam footage." Hensley's fingers paused, her jaw tight. "That's for the court," she said. Lena smiled thinly. "If your report's solid, there's no issue, right?" Marcus walked out on bail an hour later, Lena at his side, his steps steady but his mind racing. He wasn't free yet, not really. But he wasn't alone anymore either. That evening, Marcus Tate sat across from Lena Carter in a small Augusta diner, the smell of coffee and fried onions hanging in the air. Papers were spread across the table. Old complaints, police logs, anything Lena could pull on Officer Laura Hensley. "She's done this before," Lena said, tapping a file. "And 2 cases. Both black guys, both stopped for nothing. One got dropped, the other sealed." Marcus leaned back, his jaw tight. "Sounds like a habit," he said. Lena nodded. "We're subpoenaing her dashcam footage tomorrow. If it shows what you say, it's a game changer." Marcus stared at his coffee, the steam curling up. "I'm not letting this slide," he said quietly. "She counted on me staying quiet. That's not me." Lena scribbled a note. "Good. We'll build a case, but it's gonna take time." Across town, Laura Hensley sat alone in her apartment, the TV muted, her laptop open to her incident report. Words like non-compliant and aggressive posture stared back at her, words she'd used before, words that always worked. But tonight, they felt heavy. She clicked on the dashcam file, watching herself pull Marcus over, her voice sharp, her hand shoving him against the truck. She froze the frame, her stomach twisting. Closing the laptop, she stood and paced, the floor creaking under her boots. She told herself it was just a stop, just her doing her job, but doubt crept in like a slow leak. The next morning, Laura pulled into the station, her uniform crisp, her face set. But as she walked in, a couple of officers glanced away, their chatter dying down. Her supervisor handed her a court notice. Marcus's lawyer had filed for the footage. Laura's throat tightened, not with fear, but with something new, something unsteady. She climbed into her cruiser, the radio crackling, and drove out, telling herself she'd been right, that Marcus was just another guy pushing back. But deep down, she felt it. A crack in the story she'd always told herself, and it was starting to spread. The Augusta courthouse hummed with quiet whispers as Marcus Tate's case started making waves. A few days after the diner meeting, Lena Carter got a call from Tasha Green, a 29-year-old clerk who'd worked in the court records office for years. Tasha grew up in a neighborhood not far from Peach Orchard Road, where cops like Laura Hensley patrolled a little too often. She'd seen things, stops that didn't add up, reports that felt copied and pasted. When she saw Marcus's name tied to Hensley's badge number, something clicked. Tasha didn't go to the news or the police. She reached out to Lena instead. They met at a quiet coffee shop downtown, the kind with wobbly tables and strong iced tea. "I've got files," Tasha said, her voice low, sliding a USB drive across the table. "Stops, complaints, all tied to Hensley. Same story. Black men, vague charges, nothing sticks. I kept copies when I was told to shred them." Marcus, sitting beside Lena, looked at her, his eyes steady. "Why now?" he asked, not accusing, just curious. Tasha sipped her tea, her hands steady. "My cousin got pulled over like you 3 years back. I stayed quiet then. I'm done with that." Lena took the drive, her mind already racing. "You're willing to testify?" she asked. Tasha nodded. "I'll say what I know. Dates, names, everything." That night, Lena and Marcus went through the files at her hotel room, spreadsheets glowing on her laptop. 3 complaints stood out, all within 5 years, all men who looked like Marcus, all stopped for suspicious behavior that led nowhere. "She's got a pattern," Lena said, circling a date on her notepad. "This is our leverage." They filed a motion to include Tasha's evidence, pushing for a deeper look into Hensley's record. Word spread fast. By the end of the week, a local news station ran a short segment. "Augusta officer faces scrutiny over traffic stop." It wasn't much, but it was enough to make people talk. At the police station, Laura Hensley felt the shift. Officers she used to joke with now kept their distance, their hellos quick and tight. During roll call, her supervisor pulled her aside, his voice low. "You're on desk duty until this clears up," he said, handing her a memo. Laura's chest tightened, but she nodded, her face blank. "I followed the rules," she said, more to herself than him. He didn't reply, just walked away. Back at her desk, she stared at her computer, the cursor blinking on an empty report. She thought about Tasha, that clerk who'd looked at her funny last week, like she knew something. Laura's fingers hovered over her keyboard, then stopped. She didn't search Tasha's name. She didn't need to. The feeling in her gut told her enough. Someone was talking, and it wasn't just Marcus anymore. Outside, Augusta kept moving. Kids on bikes, folks mowing lawns, life ticking along. But in barber shops and church groups, Marcus's name came up more. "He's one of ours," an older woman said at a community meeting, her voice firm. "This ain't new, but maybe this time they'll listen." Laura drove home that night, the radio off, the silence loud. Her badge sat on the passenger seat, heavier than it used to be, and for the first time, she wondered if she'd misread Marcus or herself all along. The Bibb County Courthouse in Augusta wasn't fancy, just a squat building with faded brick and windows that caught the morning light. Inside, the air was thick with tension as Marcus Tate's preliminary hearing began. Folks filled the wooden benches, neighbors, a few reporters, some city workers whispering about what might go down. Marcus sat at the defense table, his hands folded, his face calm but focused, like he was ready for whatever came next. Lena Carter stood beside him, flipping through a stack of notes, her pen marking key points. Across the aisle, Officer Laura Hensley sat stiff in her uniform, her ponytail tight, her eyes locked straight ahead. She hadn't looked at Marcus one sex. The bailiff called the court to order, and Judge Evelyn Harper, a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes, took her seat. Lena stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. "Your Honor, we'd like to start with the dashcam footage from Officer Hensley's cruiser. It directly contradicts her report about my client's arrest." Judge Harper nodded, her glasses catching the light. "Proceed," she said. The room dimmed as a screen flickered to life, and the footage rolled. The video was crystal clear. Timestamp in the corner, audio crisp. It showed Marcus's borrowed pickup truck pulling over, his hands on the wheel, his movements slow and careful. Laura's voice cut through, sharp and clipped, telling him to get out. Her hand rested near her holster, her posture tense. Marcus stepped out, hands raised, his voice calm as he asked what was going on. Then came the moment everyone would talk about later. Laura shoving Marcus against the truck's hood, his body rocking slightly from the force. No sudden moves from him, no raised voice, just a guy asking questions. The cuffs clicked on, and the screen went dark. A low murmur rippled through the courtroom, folks shifting in their seats. Judge Harper turned to Laura, her voice even but firm. "Officer Hensley, does this footage match your report?" Laura adjusted her posture, her fingers gripping the edge of the stand. "Not exactly, Your Honor," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "But in the moment, it felt different." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Did the defendant lunge at you or resist in any way, as your report claims?" Laura's eyes flicked to the floor, then back up. "He questioned me," she said. "It felt confrontational." Judge Harper leaned forward. "Did he physically resist?" Silence hung for a beat. Laura swallowed. "No, ma'am, not physically." The crowd stirred again, whispers buzzing like static. Lena stood, her blazer sharp against the courtroom's drab walls. "Sir, Your Honor, we also have statements from 3 other men in Augusta. Similar stops, similar charges, all involving Officer Hensley. These aren't random mistakes. They're a pattern. For years, no one had the resources or the chance to push back. That changes today." She called the first witness, Carl Jenkins, a 52-year-old mechanic who walked to the stand with a slight limp. He adjusted his tie, his voice steady. "4 years ago, she pulled me over leaving my shop. Said I didn't signal right. I asked why I was stopped, and she made me get out, searched my car. Found nothing, but I got a ticket anyway. Felt like she was looking for trouble." Next came Andre Miles, a 38-year-old delivery driver, his hands clasped tight. "She stopped me 2 summers back. Said I looked like someone they were after. I didn't argue. Just asked what I did. She got mad, cuffed me right there. Charges got dropped, but I lost a day's pay." The third witness, Jamal Reed, a 45-year-old barber, spoke last. "She pulled me over in 21, said my tail light was out. It wasn't. Asked me questions like I didn't belong in my own neighborhood. When I spoke up, she wrote me up for resisting. I paid the fine to make it go away." Each story landed like a stone, heavy and undeniable. Laura sat still, her face pale, her eyes fixed on a spot on the wall. Finally, it was her turn. She took the stand, swore the oath, and sat, her hands folded tight. Lena approached, her steps measured. "Officer Hensley, you've been with Augusta PD for 14 years, correct?" Laura nodded. "Yes." Lena's voice stayed calm. "How many complaints have been filed against you in that time?" Laura hesitated. 5, she said softly. "Do you think any of them were fair?" Laura's lips pressed thin. "No, I was doing my job." Lena tilted her head. "Even this one?" Laura didn't answer right away. Her eyes darted to Marcus, then to Tasha Green, the clerk sitting near the back, watching quietly. "I thought I was right," Laura said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you still think that?" Lena pressed. Laura looked down, her shoulders sagging. I don't know," she admitted, the words heavy like they cost her something. Judge Harper called a recess, and the courtroom emptied into the hallway, voices overlapping, some angry, some stunned. Outside, the Georgia sun baked the pavement, reporters circling like hawks. Marcus stood on the steps, breathing slow, ignoring the microphones shoved his way. Laura slipped out a side door, her lawyer hustling her past the cameras. Back inside, Judge Harper returned, her gavel sharp. "I've reviewed the evidence, footage, statements, reports. There's enough here for a full trial on charges of misconduct and falsifying a report against Officer Hensley. Court's adjourned for today." The gavel cracked, and the room exhaled. Marcus stood, his expression unchanged, but something in his eyes said he wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The trial didn't stretch on forever. Once that dashcam footage hit the news, Augusta couldn't look away. Local TV replayed the clip of Officer Laura Hensley shoving Marcus Tate against his truck, her voice sharp, his hands steady. National outlets picked it up, and soon Laura's name was everywhere, tied to words like misconduct and abuse of power. She was suspended without pay, her badge locked away while the department scrambled to respond. Her lawyer kept talking about stress on the job and split-second decisions, but the footage spoke louder than any excuse. By the time the courtroom filled again, 3 weeks later, the air felt different, heavier, like the town itself was holding its breath. Marcus sat in the front row, his face calm, his navy tie knotted tight. Lena Carter stood ready, her briefcase stuffed with notes and Tasha Green's files. Laura was there too, but not in uniform. Just a plain gray blazer, her hair loose, her eyes fixed on the floor. No badge, no holster, just a woman who looked smaller than she used to. Tasha sat a few rows back, her arms crossed, her gaze steady. Carl, Andre, and Jamal were there too, their presence quiet but solid, like they were saying, "We're not invisible anymore." Judge Evelyn Harper didn't waste time. She read the ruling in a voice that cut through the room's hum. "Officer Laura Hensley is guilty of misconduct in public office and falsifying a police report," she said. "No jail time, but the hammer fell hard. She was stripped of her badge, banned from ever working as a cop again." The gavel hit, and a ripple went through the crowd. Not cheers, just a collective exhale. Laura stood slowly, her lawyer whispering something, but she didn't nod, didn't speak. She walked out, head down, past the reporters shouting her name. Outside, the courthouse steps buzzed with cameras and chatter. Marcus didn't stop for the microphones. He just shook Lena's hand, gave her a quiet "thank you," and headed to his cousin's truck. Lena watched him go, then turned to Tasha, who'd slipped out behind her. "You did good," Lena said. Tasha shrugged, but her eyes were bright. "Somebody had to," she replied. Across town, folks gathered at diners and barber shops, talking it over, some proud, some skeptical, all knowing Augusta wouldn't forget this one. Marcus drove home, the radio off, the weight of it all settling in. It wasn't just his win, it was a crack in something bigger, and it wasn't closing anytime soon. Marcus Tate didn't linger at the courthouse after the verdict. He nodded to Lena Carter, thanked her quietly, and drove back to his aunt's house on Peach Orchard Road. The evening air was warm, the kind of Georgia sticky that clung to your skin. He sat on the porch, a glass of sweet tea sweating in his hand, watching fireflies blink in the yard. His aunt brought out a plate of cornbread, still warm from the oven, and sat beside him. "You holding up okay?" she asked, her voice soft but searching. Marcus took a sip, the ice clinking. "Yeah," he said. "It's not over, though, not really." She patted his knee. "Never is, baby. But you made them see you. That's something." He looked out at the street, where a kid pedaled by on a bike, laughing into the dusk. Life kept moving, but it felt different now, like Augusta had shifted just a little. The news didn't let up. Channels replayed the dashcam clip, pundits arguing over what it meant for policing in small towns like this one. A lawyer on TV called it a wake-up call, saying departments couldn't hide behind one bad apple anymore. Another said it was a start, but the system hadn't changed overnight. Marcus didn't watch much of it. He was too busy thinking about what came next. A week after the trial, he filed a civil lawsuit, not for cash, but for records. He wanted every stop Laura Hensley ever made, every complaint, every report, out in the open. No more secrets, he told Lena over coffee at a downtown diner. She grinned, scribbling on a napkin. "Your trouble, Marcus Tate," she said. But her eyes said she was proud. Laura, meanwhile, was gone, not just from the force, but from Augusta. Her house hit the market, a for sale sign staked in the yard, blinds drawn tight. Her cruiser was sold at auction, her name fading from the headlines. Word was she'd moved to a small town an hour away, applying for security jobs, but her reputation followed like a shadow. No one heard from her. No statement, no apology. Just silence. At a bar off Broad Street, a retired cop shook his head over a beer. "She thought she was untouchable," he said to no one in particular. "Guess she learned." Back in Augusta, the city announced a review of Hensley's stops going back a decade. Notices went out to dozens of people who'd filed complaints, men who'd been pulled over, cuffed, or ticketed for nothing but driving down the wrong street. The mayor held a press conference, promising transparency and reform. But Marcus wasn't holding his breath for promises. He wanted proof, and he wasn't alone. At a town hall a month later, Tasha Green stood up, her voice steady at the microphone. "Nobody should be afraid to drive home," she said. "Nobody should have to prove they belong here. We're not asking for favors, just fairness." The room clapped. Not loud, but real. The kind of applause that meant people were listening. Marcus didn't go back to Denver right away. Something kept him in Augusta, like the town was asking him to stay. He started showing up at community centers, at first just to listen. Folks recognized him. Barbers, teachers, kids who'd seen his face on the news. They asked questions. "What happened at the stop? How'd you fight it? Could you help me with something like that?" So Marcus started talking. Every Wednesday night he held a workshop at the East Augusta Rec Center, calling it Know Your Rights. He kept it simple: how to handle a stop, what to say, what not to do. The first night, 10 people showed up. A month later, it was 30. Teenagers, parents, even an off-duty cop who sat in the back, taking notes without a word. One evening, a 16-year-old named Caden raised his hand. "Weren't you scared?" he asked, his voice quiet. Marcus leaned against a folding table, thinking. "Yeah," he said. "Plenty of times. But staying quiet's scarier. If I'd backed down, she'd still be out there, and I'd be wondering what if." Caden nodded, like it sank in. The room felt different after that, like everyone was a little taller. Word spread, and soon churches were passing out flyers for the workshops, teachers mentioning them in class. At a high school on the west side, a civics teacher added Marcus's case to her lesson plan, taping a news clipping to the board. "This is what standing up looks like," she told her students. Lena drove down from Savannah every few weeks, helping with the lawsuit and swapping ideas over burgers at a spot near the river. "You're building something," she told Marcus one night, ketchup on her fries. "It's bigger than the trial." Marcus shrugged, but he felt it too. Not just a win, but a ripple. He wasn't chasing fame or headlines. He was chasing the moment when someone like Caden wouldn't have to ask if speaking up was worth it. Augusta didn't transform overnight. Cops still patrolled, folks still argued at city council meetings, and some said nothing had really changed, but in the small places it had. At a barbershop on MLK Drive, an old man told a story about a stop from years back, and the younger guys listened instead of scrolling their phones. At a church picnic, a woman wrote in the newsletter, "Your voice matters, even if it shakes." Marcus kept getting emails, hundreds of them, from strangers across Georgia and beyond. "This happened to me," they'd write, or "How do I fight this?" He read every one, not for attention, but because each story reminded him why he'd kept going. One night, alone in her new apartment 2 towns over, Laura Hensley opened her laptop. She found a video of Marcus's workshop, uploaded by a local news page. She clicked play, her face unreadable. Marcus stood at a podium talking to a packed room. "Silence lets wrong keep going," he said, his voice steady. "Your story's enough to start something." Laura watched for a minute, then closed the tab. She sat back, the room quiet, her old badge tucked in a drawer she never opened. She didn't post a comment or reach out. She just listened, and for the first time, she didn't have an answer for herself. Marcus kept teaching, kept pushing for those records, kept showing up. People started asking if he'd run for council, lead a group, do something bigger. He didn't know yet. For now, he was here, in Augusta, where kids rode bikes past his aunt's house and the air smelled like peaches and possibility. He'd spoken up, and the town had heard him. That was enough to keep going. For him, for Caden, for anyone who'd been told to stay quiet. Marcus Tate leaned against the rec center's podium, the Wednesday night crowd filing out, their voices buzzing with questions and ideas. Caden lingered, clutching a Know Your Rights flyer, his eyes bright with something new. Hope, maybe, or just the start of courage. Marcus realized then that this wasn't just about his traffic stop or Laura Hensley's badge. It was about showing people they could speak up, even when their voice shook, and that truth, once told, could shift things. Maybe not the whole world, but a neighborhood, a classroom, a heart. He had learned that silence only protects the wrong, while standing firm like he did could light a path for others. You don't need to be fearless, just unwilling to stay quiet. Every story shared, every question asked, builds a community stronger than any badge or bias. Marcus smiled, locking the center's door, knowing he'd be back next week, helping more folks find their voice. If this story hit home, don't let it end here. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life lessons about respect, justice, and courage. Hit that button, join us, and let's keep telling the stories that matter together so no one's truth gets left behind.